Good morning. Testing, testing. Good morning. Actually, good afternoon and good evening to the folks watching remotely. Welcome. My name is Stephen Balcom. I'm the founder and CEO of the Family Online Safety Institute, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. And that's really true. This is my first, I've gotten out of the house, first of all, and crossed the Atlantic, and I've been seeing folks that I have not seen in 2, 3, sometimes as many as 10 years. It's extraordinary. We timed it so that COVID would all be over, right? Sort of the case, particularly here. We wear more masks in America. I think we're more cautious. And then there's a train strike, but you know, what the heck? We can roll with the punches. Then there's a tube strike. We're like, oh, that's really bad. I wonder if anyone will show up. And look at you all. This is an amazing, amazing turnout. It's also been fabulous weather, thank you, since Sunday. And I got a few raindrops on my head this morning on the way in. I thought, yeah, this is the London I remember. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. There's a great quote from the movie Annie Hall. This is going to date me. But the character says, 80% of success is just showing up. So we're already 4/5 of the way there. So thank you all for coming today. We're going to have a fantastic series of conversations. So just a couple of words about Fosi. We're an international nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., although we also are a registered charity here in the UK. I've worked from here. My colleagues have worked from here over the years, too. We love working in the UK scene, and now we have to say, and Europe. We used to just say Europe, but now we have to say the UK and Europe. We're not going to go there today. There will be no, we won't raise the B word at all, I promise. So our mission, the Fosi's mission, is to make the online world safer for kids and their families. We work in what we call the 3 Ps of policy, practices, and parenting. Enlightened public policy, industry best practices, and something we call good digital parenting. And we're going to touch on pretty much all 3 of those today. The theme for today is online safety, a transatlantic view. And the thought was it would be really good to have a conversation with folks from the US, from the UK, and Europe, and to figure out the similarities, but also the pretty big differences in approaches, both in terms of legislation and in terms of technological solutions. So we're going to see a lot of that. Oh, by the way, I think we also have folks from India here as well. Where are you, Ami?
Right here.
Good man. So we have representation from beyond Europe as well, which is great. I do want to start, though, with a huge, huge thank you to Google, who's provided us this fantastic venue. And obviously, I don't know if you guys have tasted the food yet, but it's cool. This is the best orange juice I've ever had. Again, I haven't been out for a while, so maybe that's what it's about. But thank you to Markham Erickson, who you can hear from in a moment. Almudena Lara, where are you, Almudena? And your team have been phenomenal. Emily Cashman, where are you, Kirsten? Fantastic. And the logistics team, they're incredible. If ever you want an event, come and talk to me, and I'll introduce you to these guys. They're great. Also, we have a sponsor, TikTok. And where do we have Alexandra? And Alexandra Evans, thank you so much. And Eric Ebenstein. Eric, are you with us at the back? You guys have been incredibly generous and made it financially possible for us to come here. So thank you, and we'll be hearing from you, Alexandra, later. I should also mention Yoti. Where's Julie? Julie Dawson? Oh, there you are. Thank you for your support as well. Really, really appreciate it. And we've been able to spend some time together this week already, so really appreciate that. So this moment is not unlike where we were in 1995 and 2005. You know, the mid-90s saw the emergence of this thing called the World Wide Web. And I don't know if I don't know, maybe not many of you as old as me, but yeah, I can remember watching television and the broadcasters would come on and say, what is this thing called the world? What is HTTP and a URL? All of these words were like really strange and mysterious. Then we got the dot-com gold rush. Then we got the dot-com bust. And But around the mid-2000s, we saw the emergence of what we later called Web 2.0 and social media sites. And then we got to learn terms like user-generated content and cyberbullying, unfortunately. And we watched kids create the content we used to try to keep them away from. And they were doing it on the fly on these mobile phones that were almost magical in the power that they had. And so here we are at the dawn of what some folks are calling Web 3. And we're starting to learn new terms like metaverse and cryptocurrency. And we, the folks represented in this room, are trying to collectively get our heads around where all of this is going, while still having not really solved the issues that Web 1.0 and 2.0 threw up. So the hope, and this is part of what we're here for today, is that we learn from the mistakes as well as the successes that we've had over the last, 20, 25 years. And maybe find a way to balance the imperatives of safety, for instance, and privacy. Can we craft legislation, for instance, that is grounded in research, and we've got some researchers with us today, but that doesn't also infringe on free expression and innovation? I hope so, and I think most of you are on the optimistic scale when we're thinking about technology, although there's some days when my optimism wanes a little bit. So anyway, to help us navigate this very challenging set of issues, we've got a fantastic group of speakers, panelists, moderators, but we also want to hear from you, both here in the room, but also tuning in remotely. And we do, I believe the live stream is working. Thank you, thumbs up. And so for those of you listening remotely, please send in your comments and questions through the chat, and they will be translated onto the screens here for us to respond to. So, with all of that, it is my very, very great pleasure to introduce to you Markham Erickson, who is the VP of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google. I only met Markham a few weeks ago over a wonderful breakfast meeting in Washington. It's very rare in DC to meet someone as astute and as high level as Markham is, who is also a genuinely warm and very nice human being. So Markham, please join me in welcoming Markham.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, and welcome, and good morning. I do feel like it's finally proper London weather. I would have just been disappointed if it was all sunshine this week. But it's great to see so many of you here navigating the rail strike, the weather. Many of you have come from great distances, and many of you are online because of those challenges, and thank you for participating in that way. And I really extend my warm welcome to you, and thank you for coming to these wonderful offices here that we have in the UK. They're quite amazing. You know, it goes without saying that children right now are facing more challenges than ever before. And COVID certainly exacerbated and accelerated many of those challenges. Yesterday, I asked for some statistics and learned that in 2020, with the pandemic, UNICEF had calculated that nearly 500 million people worldwide had lost access to education during the pandemic. Nearly 500 million people. There are alarming instances of gun violence. Children are having to do things in schools to train for situations that none of us would want them to have to learn. The stories are quite amazing. My own youngest child is 7 years old and has to think about when he goes to the restroom where he would hunker down if something happened and he was by himself in the restroom, and what that means. It's quite amazing. And of course, You know, the online environment presents tremendous opportunities for distance learning, for education, for entertainment, but it creates challenges as well. And I think any of us that are parents struggle with how we balance screen time and access and independence. And these are not easy answers for us as parents. And they're not easy answers for policymakers and society as we try to balance legitimate policy questions. Google, particularly in the last few years, has really accelerated its investment in building child protective, child enhancing features and products into our services from the inception by hiring engineers and putting engineers into the product designs from the beginning, which is really critical if what is going to make a difference, rather than looking at this space as a place where after the product is designed, you think about how it's going to affect children. And that's been a big change that my colleague, wonderful colleague Mindy Brooks, who you'll hear from later, who will be hosting a coffee discussion, is leading within Google. And it's made a tremendous difference. But the reason this, Stephen, this event is so important, and these kind of conferences are so important, is because, of course, Google can't and shouldn't do this alone. And some of the decisions that we have to make when we design our products need to be done with not just being informed by academics and experts in child psychology, child safety, but with policymakers, NGOs, and others about how do we balance children's rights to access content and privacy and age assurance. And no one company should make some of these policy decisions. We need to make them as a society. One of the things that we're doing in that vein of trying to further promote research in this field is we've announced a funding initiative with Fosi to carry out independent research covering the US, the UK, and France to help us better understand these questions and how the views of the children and parents manifest in different markets. And we do hope this research will be a key contribution in the debate and will help policymakers and companies in their quest to offer more age-appropriate experiences. We also have conducted research on our own within Google and done that, and all of this hopefully will be accretive to our common goal. But enough of that. The real star is about to come on stage, and it's really my pleasure to introduce someone that for this community doesn't really need an introduction, Baroness Kidron, who has been really a genuine on the vanguard in thinking about smart ways to protect children and to put aside rhetoric in place of thoughtful policy. And that's rare these days, and is genuinely motivated to find solutions. We don't always agree, and we've had discussions about that. We agree on the ultimate goal, no doubt about that. But I'm convinced we will be able to find ways to agree on policy, on age assurance solutions, that we can work constructively to do so. And I really value our friendship and our collaboration, and I hope we can continue to do so. Baroness Kidron, again, needs no introduction, but for those that aren't familiar with her, she's a crossbench peer. She's founder of the Five Rights Coalition. She has been active in the UK online safety bill discussion, and of course, she's the architect of the UK Age-Appropriate Design Code. And looking forward to hearing Baroness Kidron challenge us and motivate us and hopefully leave us with a sense of encouragement that there are positive things to come to continue to advance the cause of protecting children online. So with that, Baroness, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We were just having a chat earlier, and I actually found myself saying I'm someone who prides my independence, but I have no constituency. And I realize I'm quite wrong. The people in this room, the people who represent NGOs, who care about this issue, the parents, the children, and all of you who make tech are my constituency. And for all of you for being here and listening to this, I thank you for your work, because I hope what I have to say is not easy listening. Now, I had originally intended to do quite a barnstorming, tightly argued, typed speech, but unfortunately I've been unwell recently, but I really wanted to be here today. And so when I sat down yesterday to write my remarks, I'm afraid for the first time in at least half a decade, they came like that. So first of all, if I stumble, it's because I can't read my own handwriting. And if it's incoherent, it's because it was written in a stream of consciousness. But I hope nonetheless that it touches on some of the things that you're going to discuss later in the day. So, I imagine that everyone present and those of you listening believe that you are part of making incremental change, using your power, your influence, your talent, your jobs to make things better for kids. And I imagine, too, that it gives you comfort, because I feel that about myself, and it does give me some comfort. But huge swathes of kids make a direct link between their online experience and their body dysmorphia, between the cruelty that they experience in their lives, sexual abuse, low self-esteem, addictive commercial practices, scams, etc., etc. So whatever increments or positive changes we feel we are responsible for or contributing to, they're not keeping up or meeting the needs of children. Now, I am, as many of you, because I have many friends in this room, I have to say, and colleagues, I am a professed tech lover, yeah? For 30 years I was a filmmaker, I was an early adopter of technology. In a cupboard at home, I actually have the first commercially available webcam, and I didn't realize, I got one before anyone else did, so there was no one even to talk to. I have, as someone found out this morning already, a 6-letter email address, of which I'm quite proud, because those are hard to come by these days. And as much as I am motivated by getting a fairer deal for young people, I am angered by the assertion that the appalling outcomes for kids are an inevitable outcome of all the good that tech has brought. I do not accept that idea, and that idea has permeated the design of service, it's permeated our politics, and it stands in the way of getting this right for this generation and the generation that comes after. Undeniably, putting kids first impacts on profit, on growth, sometimes on other people's activity and behavior. It may cost time, resources, intellectual and emotional bandwidth, rigor of thinking. Yes, it does not come without a cost. But unless and until everyone in this room, everyone beyond, those who you answer to elsewhere make kids' safety and well-being a non-negotiable priority, then the increments and the relativist efforts counted as wins for children will never be enough, and we will be forever having this keynote with someone else's voice again next year. Now, I've been asked to reflect on a few very specific things. And they are the difference between US-UK on children's rights and parents' rights, safety and privacy and the perceived tension of that, and legislating in the US and the UK, particularly in relation to the work that's happening right now by California lawmakers on the age-appropriate design code. And I will do all of those, and I will touch on them briefly, hopefully in a way that we can then have some questions and discussion so that it's actually an open session. But before I do that, I did want to tell you about Tuesday. Because it was neither a spectacularly horrendous day, nor was it a day without drama. And given that I was sitting here yesterday writing these notes, it seemed very present in my mind. My day started as a member of the Oxford AI Ethics Institute Advisory Board. And in our meeting, which was remote and involved philosophers, computer scientists, policymakers, academics from all over the world, interestingly including China, we had a very in-depth discussion about many issues, but the ones that I want to draw your attention to was, first of all, a conversation about persuasive design in which one person was talking about an app that creates a hair on the screen, so you think that you need to remove that hair, and as you do, it sends you to another website that you didn't want to go to. Then we had a conversation that actually touches on what we're going to talk about later today, age assurance. And there was a really fascinating debate between two colleagues in which one put a very forceful case for being fair to a narrow group of kids, in this particular instance, 17-year-old girls of color, against another colleague who said, in being fair to that group, you were letting down all children of that 16 to 18 age group. That was an interesting conversation. Then the colleague from China started talking about facial recognition and saying that actually one of the issues is that in order to really know you're dealing with a person, you actually have to go way beyond the face, and how much of the environment and the body was being captured, and how much did the people who were having facial recognition understand that their environment or their body was being captured, or were they actually thought they were just showing this piece of their life. In the end, the issues that came up in that conversation were so detailed. The ethics that we need to work out is so specific, and this conversation is not happening in policy circles, and it's not happening about how the law can support the answers to those questions. And unless we start getting sophisticated, we cannot come to the correct answers. That was before lunch. At lunchtime, I had a conversation with parents whose only unhappy connection is that they have lost children to suicide in relation to things that happened online. And we were talking about an amendment to the online safety bill for their access to data. And I'm not just talking about what their child may have triggered their child, that may still be triggering other children, but I'm also talking about their access to the posts, to the pictures, to the voice of their child who's no longer with them. Yeah? And in the afternoon, I got a look at a report which is actually being published today about the number of under 13-year-old girls who are sharing nudes and the kinds of pressures they feel and the socio-economic makeup of the girls who feel the most pressure and send the most nudes and come to the most harm. At which point I was entirely depressed to get a text saying, I just sent you something. You got to do something. What I was sent was an audio recording of two boys, one 13, one 17, with graphic descriptions of necrophilia, sexual violence, bestiality, violent death. And particularly grim, in my view, was the ease of access, the volume of material, the casual availability, the sharing and spreading between them. Few clicks, no questions asked, and normalizing activities that not only pervert their own understanding of body, emotion, sexuality, society, but so too all the people around them. Which is why that when I got to reading the submissions by industry associations on the California bill, I think I was mad as hell. And we will come back to that. So, this was not an atypical day for me. Wasn't a great day. But, you know, from the hair on the screen to the lost souls of those boys, it reminds me of what we have to do. And I think unless we keep reminding ourselves of the range of issues, of the detail of the issues, then we will never get to solutions. The public conversation is not as sophisticated as the forces that are set against children having a fair go at an online world that they deserve. And I maintain, to your point, that we do have the power to do better. We have the power to do better in this room. We have the power to do better in politics. We have the power to be better in technology. And I actually think citizens, parents, children also have the power to demand better and to be more demanding consumers. We all have the power to do better. So let me just talk a little bit about the difference between parents and kids and the American concept, or lack of concept, of children as rights holders. I think one of the most powerful things that I've ever been involved with Sonia Livingston, who you'll hear from later, was the work that we did on the general comment. It seemed to me so obvious, and of course, as a long-term children's rights activist, it seemed to Sonia immutable, that if children's rights existed, they must exist online. And in fact, when we started that work, people were still trying to insist on digital rights Children don't need digital rights. They need their rights as individuals, as human beings, to be applied. We've got to stop the exceptionality. This is not another world. It is the same world. It is on, off, in, out. You grow up in this world. If you don't have rights in the digital world, you don't have rights, period. In America, it is frustrating to hear policymakers, to hear parents, and actually very often to hear NGOs talking about parents' rights, parents' responsibility, not allowing the child to be a rights holder. And I think it's really important to recognize what the loss of that is. You know, first of all, children don't just have protection rights, they have participation rights. Well, a parent can't participate on behalf of a child. A child has to do that for themselves, yeah? They have rights even when their parents are lousy. They may not have them. They may be busy. Most parents are, in fact, working, cooking, sleeping, getting dressed, talking on the phone, whatever they're doing. They are not in the lives of their children 24/7, like the devices that the children are using. We have to start considering children as rights holders, and I think that anything that the European community can do to get that idea into the American context, both in a policy sense and a technological sense, is very important. Because the other problem of it is that the tech companies reach to parental controls. Yeah? And I think the thing is, you know, those of you who've watched Black Mirror don't need me to explain what the problem of parental controls on a child's development and autonomy are. But I think I'd like to give a less sort of horrific example. And I think it came from me a few weeks ago when I was looking at how much money is going into fintech directly focused on children, and the new online wallets for children where you give them their pocket money on the phone, but the parent is alerted every time the child spends money. And I just encourage everyone to think about their own childhood, your capacity to borrow money, have money, spend money, all seen by your parent. You can't even buy your parent a present without them knowing. It's not even, you know, it's not an answer that every time a child wishes to do something, that parental controls are the answer. And that is one of the outcomes, and we've seen it even in some of the interpretations of the code, that parental controls becomes the go-to. It's not the answer. Product safety is the answer. Children's rights are the answer. And if it's a little bit more difficult, too bad, because parental controls are not the answer. Which leads me, I hope, if this is going okay, to the question of privacy and safety. And I am really at pains to say that the conversation around privacy and safety has been distorted. Yeah? And I think it's been distorted by a number of things. But I think maybe the best way I have of trying to sort of articulate where we must go here is that the conversation between privacy and safety is currently a 2D conversation based on very firm lines that see the state as the thing that you're trying to be private from, and the child the thing that you're trying to give safety to. And in between, those people who advocate for privacy seem to forget that we're in a world order in which I think my good friend and trustee Shoshana Zuboff has coined the phrase surveillance capitalism. There are at least 3 players in this, and that actually to assume that the issues that arise from user safety, from user privacy, are in any way threatened by the safety considerations of children is really to start the conversation in the wrong place. I think as well that actually not only is the conversation unhelpfully binary, but it isn't looking forward to where we're really going with distributed systems, with immersive systems, with the next generation of technology. And the conversation we're having about safety, about privacy, is inadequate now for the next period. And I think that really, I'm sorry because I have actually lost my place, which is probably why that wasn't so. But I think I really just want to pick up on two things. First of all, the fact that the terms of the public conversation is inadequate is slowing us down in solutions. That every time something is suggested, the full power of the other side, privacy, prevent a nuanced solution. I give you, for example, the Apple attempt on CSAM, right? Every time somebody makes a step in the face of child safety, for example, the recent efforts by the EU, the entire other side come in and want to throw a baby out of bathwater. There is a landing strip. And whilst society does ultimately have to make some choices, there is a lot more safety with privacy than there is without. And that is the conversation that is being prevented. And I am going to draw your attention to a recent Politico article which mapped out the finance behind all the safety activists in Europe, and there was an eye-watering amount of money from the tech community. And I think until we are willing to start the conversation about privacy again with a realistic understanding of what privacy we really have, we cannot progress to child safety. Okay, on that note, I think I should skip because I can feel I'm talking onwards. I think I should skip. I'm not going to make general points about American legislation versus UK versus Europe. I see the virtues and problems of all, and I think that I am more expert in UK legislative processes than I am in America. But I do want to actually finish by looking at what's happening in California. Buffy Wicks, Democrat, Jordan Cunningham, Republican, saw what the Age-Appropriate Design Code had done here and rang and said, we'd like to do it for kids in California. We recognize that the tech companies have made some fantastic moves, but we also recognize that the ICO is the only regulator in the world that could hold them to account, and it seems that we should have a voice in what the code means, and we should be part of creating pressure for it to mean more. That's what they said, and I said, great, go ahead. In the period since that phone call, we have worked really hard to make sure that the assumptions of the UK are not imposed on California, that the assumptions of GDPR are not in the bill, and that everything that the companies are already doing is represented in the bill so that they can point at the work that they're already doing. There is no furthering or feathering of the regulatory nest. It is the floor that has been established. No private right of action, nothing that does not actually equate to what they are already doing. I am proud and delighted, and I have to say, frankly, quite amazed to report that in the lower house of the California Assembly, it passed 2 committees unopposed, went to the floor of the House, where it had a 72-0 vote in favor. At which point, the industry representatives started work. Started talking to senators, to the next set in the higher house, about maybe it'd be better if it wasn't 18. Maybe it'd be better to go back to 13. Because as we all know, that 13-year-olds are adults. Please disabuse anyone who actually thinks that. Again, maybe it'd be better if it was directed at children. This likely to be accessed. What does that mean? Something which they're already working at. They failed to point out to the Senate that these are rules already in place. These are rules that they have already responded to. And these are rules that are deliberately demanding acts of principle and innovation towards an outcome. This is smart regulation. This is the regulation that we actually need on age assurance. We actually need it probably on misinformation. We probably need it on a lot of issues. These are the principles of society. These are the things that kids need. Meet them and let us be the judge of whether you have met them. There is no community better to innovate to safety than the tech community of Silicon Valley. Or possibly India, or possibly Europe, or possibly, but there is no community better than the tech community to innovate for safety. But why? But why, when we have, for the first time, actually got something on the books for kids, imperfect as it may be, incremental as it may be, would you put the cement boots and the dark arts of lobbying against it? I think everyone in this room should imagine their worst version of a corporate. Not the one they work for, not the one that they think has got a good idea or has a good intent, but their worst version of a corporate, and the least sympathetic person they know on this subject. And that is what we regulate for. We regulate for the floor. We do not regulate for the ceiling. The ceiling is infinite. A better digital world for kids, a friendly digital world for kids, content for kids, all there to be had. But what we regulate for is the worst case scenario. And I do believe, as I said right at the beginning, that unless and until all of us agree that we're working for a bar to prevent what we do not wish to see, to enable what we do wish to see, then the increments and those small wins are meaningless. That we are better than the rest, or that one of you is better than the other one, is irrelevant. We need industry norms, we need global norms, we need a settlement for kids, because that next group of kids is our next world of adults. They deserve a childhood, and they deserve a better, kinder, more equitable, and less greedy digital world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was quite a stream of consciousness, wasn't it? A brilliant one.
I was in a mood yesterday.
Yes, you were. And you've really enlivened us, or certainly me. We are a little behind time, but I think we could possibly take one question. Is there a question in the audience? Has all of your thoughts been answered by... Oh, yes. And you'll need a microphone. You could run here.
I'm sorry for overrunning.
No, you're good. No, we started late, don't worry. Ian, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, Ian Corby from the Age Verification Providers Association. Beeban, good to see you back and on your way back to full health. One of the really disturbing trends is kids generating their own images. And I know Revealing Reality have just put a study out today which shows that 20% of teenage girls have sent a nude over social media, and it particularly harms deprived children more than others. Could you say something about that trend and what we might try and do to reverse that, please?
Yeah. I actually think that that's been so long-term coming, and in a funny way, it was very much inspiration for the code when we first worked on it, in the sense that, you know, that to responsibilize children, to create, millions of pounds, dollars, yen, whatever, go into creating user journeys, yeah? A/B testing, great creativity, so on. And then at the end of it, go, oh, kids are doing this, yeah? It's not that simple. And I think that the pushes and the nudges and the pressures that kids are feeling are not separate or divorced from the user journeys that they're being encouraged to go on. And sure, culture, you know, it both creates culture, and kids hack that culture for their own ends. It's not uncomplex. But I think that the policy community and the tech community are very, very quick to start saying, well, you know, this is how kids express themselves, when actually, you know, not really owning up to the forces that create those forms of expression. So I think that, you know, I did read the Revealing Reality report. It makes for unhappy reading, and I think for anyone who wants to let themselves off the hook, you know, you've really got to look at the numbers of under 13-year-olds who are there, who are sending nudes, so that's already, they're not supposed to be there. And then the impact on those children with largely, you know, more pressures, less good life chances, and so on, and it happening there. So I think that this, by design, by default, taking the risk out in the beginning is the first step, and then better reporting, redress, and then we see where we are. But this exponential curve of children actually being the authors of that, I think, is something that we called out 5 years ago. Here we are. Didn't do enough soon enough.
Great. I think we're going to hold it there. Thank you again so very, very much.
Absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate you doing this. Good luck and speedy recovery, and we'll see you again soon.
You will. Thank you.